Hey, it's Ryan Seacrest. Life comes at you fast, which is why it's important to find some time to relax. A little you time. Enter Chumba Casino. With no download required, you can jump on anytime, anywhere for the chance to redeem some serious prizes. So treat yourself with Chumba Casino and play over 100 online casino-style games, all for free. Go to ChumbaCasino.com to collect your free welcome bonus. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
This is VOCM Open Line. Call 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626. The views and opinions of this program are not necessarily those of this station. The biggest conversation in Newfoundland and Labrador starts now. Here's VOCM Open Line host Paddy Daly.
Well, all right, and good morning to you. Thank you very much for tuning into the program. It's Friday, June the 21st. This is Open Line. I'm your host, Paddy Daly. David Williams. He's producing the Come On With An edition of the program. So if you're in the St. John's Metro region, the number to dial to get in the queue and on the air, the topic entirely up to you. 709-273-5211. Elsewhere, it's toll-free long distance, 1-888-590-VOCM, which is 8626. So first full day of summer, hey, and notably cooler here in the St. John's Metro region today. Record set right across the province for temperatures yesterday. I believe out in Central, the humidex made it into the low 40s. Here, the high 30s. Now, I'm not going to complain because we don't get a whole lot of that type of weather, and a lot of people actually really love the especially hot weather. I'm not personally physically built for it, but anyway, a little bit cooler today. Welcomed. I don't know if you tuned in and took a chance to watch Canada play Argentina in our first foray into the Copa America soccer or football tournament. So, you know, we really just are a Tier 2 nation on the men's side in soccer. So to take on the World Cup defending champions Argentina is a big step, right? It's a big deal. And they acquitted themselves relatively well. It was 0-0 at the half. Argentina scored twice in the second half to beat the Canadians 2-0. We were in it, but we just can't score against the big nations. And I'm not going to be too out of my mind here about Canada not being able to take on Argentina. But we've just got this overall air of, hey, we're happy to be here kind of stuff. We had chances to score and just could not finish. Looked a little bit porous. And as the captain Alfonso Davies said, all the long balls that the big nations don't allow to bounce, they take it in a real professional first touch and on they go. We just don't we don't really play like that necessarily. But anyway, we're in it, and hopefully we can have a good experience as we get prepared to host the World Cup with the United States in 2026. All right, here's an interesting on this date in the world of football or soccer. 1970 at the FIFA World Cup final in Mexico City, Brazil, and a player named Edson Arantes do Nascimento, better known as Pele, became the first team and first player to win 3 World Cup titles. They beat 4-1 victory over Italy that day in front of a pretty sizable crowd. 107,412 people packed into the stadium in Mexico City. Anyway, Pele. Did you know his name, Dave? I didn't. I had to look it up. I knew it was a nickname, but I had no idea what his real name was. All right, and I was asked yesterday, why not give a shout out to the young fella whose suggestion for the Canada Games mascot would be, and his name is Michael Tobin. Congratulations to you, Michael. There was over 300 applications put forward by students between grades 4 to 6. He goes to St. Bernard's Elementary in Witless Bay, and the mascot is named Gusty. It's a fish. It's codfish. Anyway, so there's your bravo, and congratulations to you. All right, so we spoke with Trent Langdon, the president of the NLTA, yesterday, and there's a variety of topics that we need to broach regarding education. And yes, the summer season is here. The students are out for the summer, where the hard work really needs to begin at the Department of Education and at the NLTA and the school boards group. So there's a third meeting coming up next week about the School Safety Coalition. And inside this world, you know, sometimes I think we see it as an isolated issue, that it has to be between teachers and administrators to try to figure this out. When I do think, when we see the societal creep of violence into the schools like we saw this year, it's a community conversation. It's bigger than just people who work in the K-12 system, I would suggest. But if you want to take on any education recap of the K-12 school year, we're happy to talk about it this morning. Also been asked, how come we don't have any updates regarding 106 Airport Road, of course, the old Comfort Inn, which the government has leased for some $7 million a year for 3 years. The question about what happens after 3 years, excellent question. The last update we had, there was only 11 residents and some 10 staff on site. Not so sure if anything has changed on that front, but a bunch of emails overnight. I'm not sure if these people are friends and they get together and say, hey, how come we're not getting more information? Or maybe they're just residents of that particular neighborhood, but I don't have an update beyond that. And of course, if it's not going to be anything more than a safer emergency shelter, then we're going down the wrong road. And of course, the key word inside this play is transition. So yes, we're happy to try to get updates to see where we are and try to understand more about how we actually measure success at the Comfort Inn. But as of now, that's about all we have. All right, let's go to Labrador. So apparently pretty successful fire suppression yesterday that kept the fire from jumping across the Churchill River to get closer to the community. Excellent news. The thought is that it might not be that long before the evacuees are allowed to go back from Happy Valley Goose Bay or wherever they went to get back to their homes and their lives in Churchill Falls. One thing jumped in my mind yesterday when I was thinking about this particular story is, we just say, well, they were evacuated, and we all hope that they're safe and get where they're going, and hopefully their homes are protected and all the rest of it. But can you imagine? Apparently they got a call at 7:30 at night that said at 8:15 you have to be out. Can you imagine the stress on the parents and the children as they have to run from their homes, unsure of when they can return, unsure of what they could or should be bringing with them, and to drive some 300 kilometers to the next community, in this case Happy Valley Goose Bay, to be put up and supported by folks who are probably strangers. So just the emotional trauma of having to be evacuated just crept into my mind yesterday. But we talk about it like, well, they got evacuated. Hopefully the fire is suppressed like it has been so far. All of our water bombers are in Labrador, and that's 4 of them. There are 2 water bombers from Quebec that have made their way to help fight these fires, of which now there are 11, apparently up from 7. There's 2 more water bombers, coming from Ontario that should be on site today. So big effort to try to suppress the fire. And apparently there's 1 fire on the island as well, somewhere around South Branch. But that's under control as of now. So if anyone in the area, if you're listening from Labrador and you're a Churchill Falls resident, and you've made your way to Happy Valley Goose Bay, you want to share your experience, then please do exactly that here this morning. But apparently 11 fires now, and as a result of all of our resources being in Labrador to fight those fires, there's a province-wide fire ban. So no open fires for the foreseeable future for everywhere in the province. Probably the best idea. All right, just mentioned the Comfort Inn. And yesterday we talked about the fact that in the city of St. John's in particular, there is absolutely none 3-bedroom rentals available inside the affordability window, which they call $1,600. This is another rental report that's come forward. It's called the 2024 Canada Renters Report, conducted by the folks at Royal LePage. Here's some interesting numbers. Nearly 22% of Atlantic Canadian renters plan to purchase a property in the next 2 years. Meanwhile, 59% will not. Here's some issues regarding affordability. Nearly 1/3, 29% of renters in Atlantic Canada spend up to 30% of their net income on monthly rental costs. And that's sort of the target people look at, is 30% of your income to be spent on housing. But here it gets worse from others. 38% spend between 31 and 50% of their income, and 24% spend more than 50% of their income on rent. I mean, how do you even keep the wolf away from the door with the other 50% of your income not spent on housing? I thought that was pretty interesting numbers. Imagine 24% spend 50% of their income or more on their housing issues. Anyway, what do you think? All right, so after 35 years in municipal politics, 29 as mayor, Gary Gazine is hanging up the gavel. And congratulations, Gary. That's a long run. And people will think whatever they think of elected officials, but Gary's always been quite receptive to our calls, even all the way back on Out of the Fog. When we go to Bell Island to do shows, Gary was always very kind to us. That said, one of his goals was to improve the ferry service. And of course that was one of his goals. If you live on an island, it's one of the key issues that people discuss. And yesterday, like when we spoke with Andrew Shea, who's the mayor of Fogo Island, the immediate reaction, and it happens every single time, and I understand why, when the province spends somewhere in the neighbourhood of $90 million per year on the ferry service, which is not the entire bill, because when a ferry is provided, then of course other government services also have to be paid for. So the reactions I get, again, predictable, and here they go. If you don't like it, move. It's a little easier said than done, I would suggest, but that's the overwhelming reaction we get when we talk about the ferries on this show. So, there's not every island is created equal. Some islands actually have a very viable and prosperous future. Some maybe not. So that whole concept of simply move. So let's talk about it. And this will get me in trouble, but hey, that's it. The whole concept of resettlement. Now, it has been a dirty R word over the years, and forced resettlement seems to me like a bad idea. Emptying out the bays doesn't settle some of the issues that we face as the people of the province. So they've changed the threshold, and you know full well that the conversation is happening in some communities that are look at the writing on the wall and thinking maybe, just maybe, with the government offering, let's say $270,000 per household, maybe there's a better option elsewhere, whether it be proximity to healthcare, close by friends and family who maybe have left your community. And of course, it's a really difficult conversation to broach, especially for a bloody East End townie sitting in a studio on Kenmount Road. But you know the conversation's happening. The government lowered the threshold from 90% voting in favour to 75%. Then we have the other issue about who's eligible to vote. Remember the most recent vote that took place in Galtas. So the confusion and eligibility there was that when the vote was announced, even that people who had left the community of their own volition were still eligible to vote. And of course, if you've already left, you're going to vote yes. Why wouldn't you? Because you got the government money coming in the door, even though you've already set up shop somewhere else in the province, who knows where. So yes, it is a difficult conversation. And then it gets a little bit more complicated, and you say, just move. Okay, leave there, leave your home, leave your hometown, to go where? And to set up shop where? It's not like it's easy to find the next housing opportunity, regardless of where we're talking in the province. So, yeah, I'll see these emails. I know they're coming. And if you want to respond to them, whether it be to tell people who say simply move to go to hell, or if you want to talk about the concept and how it works, how it should work, eligibility or otherwise, we're happy to take it on. How are we doing on the phone, Dave? Let's get it going. I have a really sore throat today. All right. DFO, if you're listening, can today be the day where you tell us the dates for the recreational food fishery? Just do us a solid. I'm every June, same thing. I'm hundreds of emails in to people asking me what the dates are. I don't know. DFO absolutely does know at this moment in time. The starting date last year was the 1st of July. I don't know when it'll be this year. It was 39 days last year. It's probably going to be very similar this year. So can you just send out a news release and tell us when the food fishery opens? If you don't mind, if you could be so kind. All right, stick with the water and the fishery for a second. Here we go again. Another species, another racket about the price. And in this case, it's about capelin. And they're way apart, 15 cents apart between the FAW and the Association of Seafood Producers. So the ASP has a position of 25 cents. The FAW wants 40 cents. Here's the quote coming from current President Greg Priddy. It's infuriating. If the difference were a couple of cents, we wouldn't be here. We'd be out fishing. They want us to put fuel in our boats, catch capelin, and give it to them for nothing. Well, we did that 50 years ago, but that's over. We're not doing it anymore. I don't know what's going to have to give for some sort of meaningful, manageable relationship between the two entities so that these types of spats and the disparity in price is not the feature of virtually every single species every single year. You know, both sides have said they've reached a price-setting formula which is going to do away with some of these standoffs in the species of crab, lobster, and halibut. And of course, even if you want to talk about the whole concept of fishing the forage fish that are capelin period, whether you're from Oceania, Canada, and say it's a big mistake, the rollover quota, the total allowable catch this year is the same as it was last year, 14,533 tons, which is over 29 million pounds of capelin to be taken out of the water if they can get somewhere on price. And if that happens, the fishery will take place in about a week or two. And in the big scheme of things, if you think about the amount of fish that's caught globally, it's pretty staggering. Some 1.5 to 2.2 trillion individual fish, wild fish, are caught globally each year. 2 trillion fish? The issue inside of all of this is even though there's underreported catch, if you're fishing from a small island nation and they don't quite have the types of regulations that we have in this country and other, I'll say, more modernized countries, but 2 trillion fish taken out of the water each year, inside of that world, there's an estimated 40% comes in the form of bycatch. And we have ridiculous rules in this country about bycatch. You basically just have to throw it away, as opposed to understanding the fact that it is food, and with the dearth of food and people hungry in the country, we've got to figure out a better way. You bring it to shore, you get X price for it. People aren't going out of their way to catch what they're not going for, these species that they're not trying to get. So let's bring it to the wharf, let's give whatever discount price for it, and let's feed someone with the fish. I don't know, just throwing it out there as an idea. What do you think? I'm going to take it on. We can do it. All right. This is an interesting one that came from the Harbour Centre's annual report called Vital Signs. And it's probably easier to grasp when you look at it in graph form like they have in their paper handout, but I'm going to try to do my best to try to break it down. It's looking at the province. If Newfoundland and Labrador was a community of just 100 people, what would the makeup of that community look like? 24 would be over the age of 65. 3 would be racialized or persons of color. 3 would be immigrants. 9 would be Indigenous persons. And of course, today is National Indigenous Persons Day. 20 would be experiencing housing insecurity. 13 would feel lonely, always or often. 26 would struggle to afford food. 31 who would have difficulty financially meeting basic needs like transportation, housing, food, clothing, and other necessary expenses. 49 of the 100 would have a strong or somewhat strong sense of belonging to their local community. 51 who feel they would have an excellent or very good mental health. 19 who feel they have very poor mental health. 42 would be living on the Northeast Avalon. 40 would be living in rural areas. So a snapshot of the province was 100 people. All right, let's check in on the Twitter. We're VOCM Openline. Follow us there. Email address is openline@vocm.com. When we come back, let's have a great show to wrap up the week. That means you're getting on the phone to get in the queue right this minute. Don't go away. Welcome back to the program. Well, as the listener chimed in via social media, because we always announce at the bottom of the preamble that we are indeed on social media, and in this case X or Twitter. And it's an assertion that the folks at DFO unable to make an announcement on the recreational food fishery because the minister responsible, and that federally that's Diane Leboutier. All right, but if that's where the responsibility lies for a fundamental decision to be announced at the 11th hour every single year, then maybe the minister responsible should hustle up. I don't know, just a thought. And speaking of social media once again, and I brought this up, and even if we talk about the issues that are persistent and prevalent in schools, whether it be with distraction via cell phone and the drop in the scores in math and reading and science, then we've got ourselves a problem too as it pertains to social media, period. I mean, the research that's happening around the world really does show quite clearly that these social media platforms, particularly for children, have been problematic. I mean, it's easy enough to say that, yes, it's been a great option for people to be able to connect. And that's indisputable. It's 100% true. But you see, as much as I do, the inability for some people to detach themselves from these very addictive algorithms. So the United States Surgeon General has said what I know it's well-intentioned, but he said we should put warning labels on social media. Well, the horse has already left the barn. I mean, there's no real responsible thought that says if someone who's young and who is really on social media a lot throughout the course of the day, that they will pay heed to any type of warning. And the responsibility lies with the folks who have created the platforms. You know as well as I do. For folks who are really interested in social media, there are some folks, I don't know what else they do beyond tweet or Facebook or whatever else, or Instagram or TikTok, but it does have an addictive property. You know, for many, it would be if someone likes or reposts or retweets my thoughts, then that does indeed drive the endorphins to kind of run wild, and consequently, people would be looking for that type of gratification. And it's instant gratification. And everyone understands that. It's actually built in human nature. Some people are more prone to have a reliance on it versus others, but it's a real thing. So I know it sounds a bit flimsy and a little bit silly for the Surgeon General of the United States to talk about a warning label, and he says much akin to the warning labels that are on packages of cigarettes. And for folks who are addicted to a cigarette, you probably just turn your eyes away from those types of warnings. So not so sure that has any meaningful impact, but we do have to have a better understanding. And yes, the folks who create the algorithms really do owe us better. Because what started off as a fantastic social experiment is now quickly becoming a failed social experiment, I would think, in some corners. In addition to that, and I don't think we think about it a whole lot, nor do we talk about it a whole lot, but the way that artificial intelligence is infiltrating almost every facet of life is extraordinary. And it's happening at breakneck speed. We're probably not even aware of the impacts that are already happening because of artificial intelligence. And it can also be an extremely helpful tool. Whether we talk about it in the world of academia or otherwise, artificial intelligence is here to stay. The godfather of it is a guy named Geoffrey Hinton. He regrets ever going down this road. And for the fellow who created it to think that it's going to be an insurmountable problem, that speaks volumes. So how we control, I don't know. Because once again, it's, the regenerative artificial intelligence. And you can very quickly write a song, write an essay, write a book via just putting some keywords in, and they spit out the prose. The problem there is that there can also be very biased algorithms. It's the whole concept of garbage in, garbage out. So it's already everywhere you look. And whether it be the concerns we see that has haunted some so-called Hollywood celebrities with the deep fakes, which are going to be very real, and it's going to be further complicated to discern whether or not what you're seeing is real or fake, accurate or not. We already have a problem there. Some things are just quite innocently put forward that are mistakes, but there's other clear examples of very purposeful campaigns spreading nonsense and lies and garbage that happens far too often. And I'm not talking about people sharing a personal political opinion. I mean, so be it. That's always been the nature of the beast. It once was you only had your opinion heard by folks who were surrounding you or at the kitchen table or at the party or in the shed, and now it can be spread far and wide so very quickly that it's becoming a real unmanageable set of circumstances. As they say, a lie makes its way all the way around the world before the truth gets out of bed sometimes. And I'm not talking about government coming down on personal opinions being shared, because that's also a problem with some of the legislation that's proposed here in this country. Who gets to be the arbiter of truth? Same thing when we talk about big corporations and who gets to be arbiter of what constitutes excess profits, kicking in with some windfall taxes. Yes, of course, it's a very real thing. And, talk about the amount of money being earned in some corners, in some industries. Well, people bemoaned things like the carbon tax. And I'm purposely trying to provoke some calls here with all of the key issues that people get concerned with or like to discuss. If you look at the oil industry, across the globe, the industry makes $2 billion a day. And while we were waiting for the 3-cent increase on the carbon tax that kicked in on the 1st of April here, from New Year's Day to April 1st, price of gas went up. Without an increase in the carbon tax, the price of gas went up 30 cents. And then, of course, yes, it was a concern voiced by many about the unnecessary additional expense to be borne at the pumps, because things are already quite expensive. There's nothing quite like the sticker shock of pulling the trigger, filling up your vehicle to look back at the pump to see the recorded price for what feels like 10 or 15 seconds a pump of gas, and then boom, there you go. Whopping big bill, not to mention what we face when we happen to go to the grocery store. Okay, let's see here. Let's get going. Go to line number 2. Charlie, you're on the air. Charlie, on line number 2, you're on the air.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go
Good
right
morning,
ahead.
Paddy.
Good morning.
Yes, I wanted to speak about the last call I made. I was talking about the grey seals and the cod population being in danger in the Gulf.
Yep.
And I think it was last week sometime, or early this week, they mentioned the jellyfish population has exploded in the PEI area. Now, we didn't used to get jellyfish in our waters there till August, and I think it was the same thing up there. That's directly related to the warming of the water. So again, I don't know why they didn't stress that when they talked about the cod. You heard about the jellyfish thing up there, did you?
I have. Someone sent me a picture a couple of days ago of these massive purple jellyfish, and the tentacles, it's hard to tell from a picture sometimes, but the tentacles look like they're about 5 feet long, on top of the enormous purple jellyfish that were in, I guess, Charlottetown Harbour it was.
Oh, okay. I thought it was the smaller ones, but the larger ones are there as well.
Yeah.
That's not a good sign, Paddy. That's everything is moving up,
Well, warming water is a trend that's going to be hard to buck, and it has a direct implication with some of the ways we make a living here in this province. And whether even if we talk about salmon returns or the changing historic migration patterns of a variety of species.
Yes.
No question.
Well, speaking of salmon, there was a guy on talking about catch and release. I also spoke about that a few weeks ago. I thought he was right on in talking about just the idea of playing a salmon for your pleasure and releasing it, especially in warmer waters, and that. I don't know why that's promoted, and I don't know why so many people are continuing that, because it just seems like an exercise in futility, pure pleasure, and I can't see how that's enhancing the salmon stocks, I don't know if you want to comment on that.
Well, I mean, I have no position of authority on this one, but for folks who are in the know, is once again, it really does boil back to how warm the water is. How many fish die after they've been hooked and or caught and released? I really don't know. With the sweet spot of 18 degrees, can it be done properly? I'm really not entirely sure, but what is the consensus out there is if the water is warm, like some of the river temperatures got up to 27 last year, then the likelihood of survival is extremely low, if not zero.
And the motivation for having it is not for food, is not for the table.
It's sport angling.
It's strictly being out there and interfering with a wildlife population for no good reason. I just don't get that.
Well, it's sport. And, I mean, the people have been angling for centuries. The trick here is that the returns aren't conducive to continuing with the practice necessarily. So when there was, thousands of salmon returning each and every year to some of the notable rivers, that's just not the case anymore. So is it time for that to be revisited in full? Probably.
Well, sport, there's sport and there's sport. To me, when you're causing another creature pain for your enjoyment, I got all kinds of problems with that. Patty, regarding the wind energy project in Stephenville and across the province, have there been any real answers? I haven't been following it lately as much as to where all that electricity is going to come from when these projects need it from our grid.
Well, that's the evaluation that's currently on. We had Jennifer Williams on the program, maybe it's a couple of weeks ago at this moment in time. They're considering all kinds of stuff. They think we're going to need another 380 megawatts by 2034, and they're, whether they're talking about 150 megawatt generator, a combined cycle turbine at Holyrood, talk about purchasing another 80 megawatts of wind, and there's no specificity on that one, whether it's purchased from onshore or potentially offshore, because that's likely coming to a bay near you at some point in the future as they amend the Atlantic Accord. So they haven't landed anywhere specifically. Oh, and of course, add the eighth turbine.
It's up in the air, and if they're increasing the thing, they obviously increasing the power output. They obviously have these companies in mind. But it strikes me, if I asked people if they would invest in that project, I have an awful feeling you would get very few people who would be willing to put their money into these projects. Who are the investors? Have they ever talked about? I know Risley is in it, but how much money is he putting into it, and so on? And who are these people?
I don't know. I mean, they've only announced very minimal money has been raised at this moment in time. They've got some sort of contractual relationship with a South Korean company, but that was for pretty small money. They have a $128 million line of credit with the federal government, but where the rest of the $12 billion is coming from, I have no earthly idea. I would imagine a company the size of World Energy GH2, and whether or not people would be willing to invest, is there might be some skepticism about the business model, how lucrative it can or possibly will be, but there's also the great unknowns. People are loath to invest their money in things they don't understand, and I would suggest there's a lot of lack of understanding about these projects. So, I mean, World Energy GH2 is not just a proposal for an onshore wind farm on the Port au Port Peninsula. They've got big operations elsewhere. Like, they're one of the so-called leaders in the world of sustainable aviation diesel, with a huge operation that's going to scale up some 5 times in California at this moment.
Well, to me, for that project to be a moneymaker, there's an awful lot of things that are going to have to change. The cost of wind energy turbines and so on. From what I've read, everything is increasing pretty fast. And as far as the final buyer of that paying the money that we would need to make a profit, I just don't see that happening. It's just way out of whack as far as expense in compared to other energy sources. I'd like to mention Bill Gates's nuclear thing. He's got this called a Terra production. It's a smaller nuclear thing, and it's safer, they say. I don't know if you've read anything about this, I'm sorry?
I have, yes.
Yeah, we definitely have to look at nuclear as an energy source now to at least tide us over for the next few decades until we can do more with other sources. I don't know if you'd agree with that or not.
Well, just before I get into nuclear, the alternative for source of energy is going to be solar. I mean, that's growing leaps and bounds. The costs have come way down. And yes, it requires fossil fuel for the creation of the solar panels itself. I get all that. But solar is growing exponentially. And price is coming way back to earth. Insofar as nuclear goes, I mean, nuclear is already in operation in this country. Ontario and New Brunswick are looking at a partnership regarding some small-scale nuclear projects. So there's 4 nuclear operating plants in the country at this moment in time, producing somewhere in the neighborhood of between 13 and 15% of the country's power at this very moment. Is there going to be an expansion on that front? Very likely. Things will be about reliability, safety, and price point. And nuclear is a pretty good option on all those fronts. And yes, I know, I get it, Chernobyl, 3 Mile Island, Fukushima, there have been some major nuclear disasters, but overall in the big scheme of things has been proven to be pretty safe. I mean, because just look at some of the things we've experienced in other traditional sources of energy. They've also had major disasters.
Well, the cooling system for these, I think, is a salt solution. I'm not really sure about that. I read the article some time ago. So it's a totally different way of cooling the reactor. And you would think a place like Nova Scotia, where they get so much of their power from coal, would be looking at that. Would you not?
Probably. I mean, it's fascinating. Alberta, which is loath to consider non-traditional sources of energy, they just shuttered their last coal plant. They'll never burn another lump, apparently, which I thought was a fascinating story, to be honest. Anything else, Charlie, before we move on? Oh, Chris, one of the listeners says the company, that I'm guessing that means World Energy GH2, have gas turbines on site as per their environmental impact study. So there you go.
Oh, okay. That's news. Just a last point, the fishery opening, the recreational fishery, July 1st is on a Monday. Are they considering that it should be open the last couple of days of June to take in that weekend? Because it seems like that's a lost opportunity there. Have you heard anything?
Have you seen the dates announced?
No, I haven't.
No, I'm guessing it's going to be today. It was the 20th of June last year. And, you know, the weekends of fishery do include a Monday. So, you know, I guess it's all about the total number of days. Last year, 39. Year before, 39. I'm not anticipating huge changes this go around, but I have no idea what it's going to be. Until they announce it, it will be hard to deduce exactly what the plan is.
Okay. Thanks, Paddy.
Thanks, Charlie. Appreciate the time.
All the best. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye-bye. Let's get another one before the break. Line number 1. Doug Morris, you're on the air.
Paddy, good morning. How are you, sir?
Best kind. How about you?
Fine, thanks very much. Beautiful, lovely summer days. It's badly needed. We all enjoy that. Paddy, I'd just like to talk about something that I think I'd like to bring up. The next weekend, and July the 1st, basically is going to be a very solemn day in the history and the life of our province when the remains of the unknown soldier are going to be repatriated back to the province. And I think many people in Newfoundland, most people of all ages, young and old, but certainly the older generation, would be very interested in that particular ceremony. And I'm sure that there will be a great outpouring of emotion when that particular service takes place. Princess Anne is going to be here, and that the body of that young person, the young man, I think would be interred. It'll be a great ceremony and a very historic day for the province. When those young men left Newfoundland back in 1914 to go overseas to fight in the First World War, they were Newfoundlanders, of course. So we were an independent country at the time, and the marching tune that they marched with was that represented was the Ode to Newfoundland. A very, very important anthem in our province's history. I'm very disappointed that Memorial University, which was built to commemorate and honor the lives of those young men who died overseas, saw fit a couple of years ago, for whatever unknown reason, I have no idea, to discontinue the playing of the Ode to Newfoundland. It would be a very, very important and, I think, timely operation if Memorial University's administration And I call upon the President of Memorial and the administration and also the Premier to ensure that on the 1st of July, on that ceremony, that the Ode to Newfoundland be played, and that Memorial University come out with a statement to say that it's going to reinstate the Ode to Newfoundland as part of the tradition of the province. It's a very timely thing to do, and I just hope that the powers that be, to have the authority to do this, I call on Premier Fury to get in touch with the President of Memorial University to get this done, to get the Ode to Newfoundland reinstated, so that we all, as Newfoundlanders, can be very proud of those men and all our people and reinstate the Ode to Newfoundland, which, as far as I'm concerned, and many people feel the same way, is a very important part of our history, and no way in the world should Memorial University have done this, and it's still not too late to do the right thing, and I'm calling upon the university and the Premier to get this done for the 1st of July.
I can't imagine it won't be played at the Memorial on the 1st of July. And of course, in 1904, it was adopted as our official national anthem. When we joined Canada in 1949, it was dropped, but in 1980, it was reinstated as the official anthem of the province. The Memorial University's decision was made by a group of, I think, 7 people. And it was all about, apparently, when it was sung, it didn't represent all in attendance at the convocation ceremonies. But of course, if we're talking about inclusion, why are we eliminating something? So if it was about including the Ode to Labrador, fine. And if people don't know the words, then hand out a song sheet. But to just take it out of play, and I don't think there was anyone actually, maybe I'm wrong here, but I can't imagine anyone actually being offended by attending a convocation ceremony in Newfoundland and Labrador and the Ode to Newfoundland is played. So add the Ode to Labrador, do whatever, but if you want to be inclusive, don't exclude things.
Exactly, and I think you're right. I think the Ode to Newfoundland certainly, probably, very likely, will be played on the day of the commemoration ceremony in the next week, next 10 days or so. But just as a symbol, Memorial University should make a statement, in my opinion, and I think others will agree, that we have agreed to reinstate. We decided to reinstate the Ode to Newfoundland as a memorial, as a token, as a reminder to all those young men who went overseas and fought, so that we'd be able to have a university, be able to do this stuff. So Memorial should do that. They should do the right thing, and they would get the goodwill of a lot of people who have parted ways with Memorial, and Memorial has done a great disservice to itself and to the people of the province and the graduates and all the citizens by doing this. So that's all I want to say about it. Thank you, Paddy, and it's going to be a great ceremony for sure. We're all looking forward to that. But Memorial can do the right thing. Correct the problem that they created.
Appreciate the time, Doug. Thanks for the call.
Thank you very much, Paddy. Appreciate it. Keep up the good work, sir.
You too. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty popular opinion for it to be reinstated. I like it, and I'm in support of that thought. Okay, just a quick one. There's a car going the wrong way on the Pitts Memorial heading west in the eastbound lane with the 4-way flashers on near the on-ramp from Kilbride, and that was sent a couple of minutes ago. So, car going the wrong way. You just heard a description of what it all cost. Let's take a break. When we come back, it's Recreation Month. Join us on line number 5 is the Executive Director at RecNL. That's Steve Martin. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 5. Say good morning to the Executive Director at Recreational Newfoundland and Labrador. That's Steve Martin. And good morning, Steve. You're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy. How are you doing?
Couldn't be better. How about you?
Doing pretty good.
Great stuff. Happy Recreation Month.
Yes, sir. It is Recreation Month. Just want to call in and let our listeners know that it is Recreation Month, and certainly get out to. It's been fantastic weather over the last few days, but we got lots happening within Recreation Newfoundland Labrador this month. We have a massive contest happening on our social media campaign. And Paddy, I guess the reason for my call mainly is to discuss recreation and kind of raise the awareness of recreation. A lot of people that we talk to tend to think that recreation is more physical activity based, but it's so much more than that. We've been certainly pushing many different types of activities that people can do in the province, such as hiking, biking, dancing, at the end of the day. And I believe you were a champion for us a number of years ago. It's whatever you do to make you time, and that makes you well.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. People think whether it's organised sport or you have to be out on the East Coast Trail, but out in the park flicking around the Frisbee is recreation. Just anything to get away from the sedentary lifestyle that many of us have, especially over the winter months when it might be not as enjoyable for some. I like the winter personally, but for many people that's part of the time where they put on that bit of extra winter weight, what have you. But anything could be recreation as long as it gets you going.
Absolutely. So, there's lots of activities and certainly lots of facilities, parks, and just being in the outdoors, or maybe it's indoors and playing a board game. So we always say recreation is broad, and whatever makes you well. But, we're a membership-based organization. We have lots of municipalities and various volunteer committees who are out there providing recreation opportunities to the people of the province. And I do think it's important to thank them for all their work. We always say we work when people play. And we have a lot of volunteers, a lot of dedicated recreational staff out there who are giving up their evenings, their weekends to ensure Canada Day is coming up. That's a big one for our members who are providing these activities for families to get out and enjoy.
Yeah, it's one thing if you want to get the heart rate going and you're really working on your cardiovascular or you're trying to lose weight or add muscle mass, but recreation can be all-encompassing for sure. And also at RecNL, it's also a focus somewhat on not just active living and or inclusive recreation, but our diet, because your diet can go a long way to the energy required to take that first step, because the first step is the most difficult step. Let's be real. Once you get into a routine or a habit of getting out for a walk or a run or ride your bike or whatever, it becomes exactly that, a routine. So talk about the Eat Great and Participate program.
Absolutely. So our Eat Great Participate program has been going on for some time now, and what we're looking to do here is just promote the benefits of healthy eating, combine that with our Active Living Leadership Network, and just communicate those opportunities and exactly how people can take care of themselves a little more by making some simple food choices. And also, Eat Great works heavily with the facilities in our province, our recreation facilities, and ensuring that while those, stadium fries everyone loves, at the end of the day, they should have a healthy menu option that people can avail of as well. Yeah,
100%. And, I know there's a keen focus on children and, trying to promote a healthy diet and good dietary choices. But, when you talk about active living, we've already mentioned hiking a couple of times. Inside the active living program, talk about someone who's a hiker. Not only that, but a mountaineer. You got Dr. T.A. Loeffler as your ambassador there. How's that program working?
Yeah, TA's been absolutely fantastic as an ambassador. She's spoke at numerous conferences, just basically taking the benefits of recreation and informing people how they can avoid burnout, reduce stress levels and be healthier as a whole through recreation. So she recently presented at the PMA conference, and everyone loved her presentation. And at the end of the day, it was just about making simple daily choices that are going to have major impacts on your life. As well, through that, we've launched That's Recreation. So for the full year, every month, we're going to be launching a new video that our members send us, and it's going to showcase exactly what communities across Newfoundland and Labrador are doing to bring recreation opportunities to the residents in their towns.
100%. I know there's a participation issue going on right now. We had one of the representatives, the rec director from Carbonear, coming on talking about, to make it fun, get some points, maybe win some money for your community. And in this front, I think the first prize is $100,000, and they're the leading community in this province at this moment in time. So those types of things, if you put a little incentive there, there's nothing quite like that carrot at the end of the stick to get people up and moving, even though there's all the obvious benefits attached with being active.
Absolutely, and we all know how competitive Newfoundland can get, so I strongly encourage those that are taking part to, and again, it's our members who are bringing these opportunities and providing these activities to hopefully get that money, and $100,000 is a long way when we're looking at putting some piece of recreation infrastructure in our town.
100%. Anything else you want to say this morning, Steve?
No, certainly people can follow along our Facebook, Instagram page, and our website, recreationnl.com. And I believe we'll be talking to our president next week. So a reminder to the public to take that time and do something that makes you well today.
100%. Thanks for the time this morning, Steve. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Patty.
Take good care. Bye-bye. Bye. All right, I think I banged out 100% there a few times. Anyway, let's take a break. When we go back, the recreational food fisheries in the queue. But someone wants to talk about the old age security. We're going to speak with the president of the Newfoundland Labrador Association of Fire Services. That's Chief Dwayne Antle. That one come by chance. Don't go away. Welcome back to the program. Let's go to line number 6. Take a word to the president of the NL Association of Fire Services. That's Chief Dwayne Antle. Morning, Chief. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. How are you?
Very well. How about you?
I am doing great. I'm here now, parked on the side of the Trans-Canada Highway, admiring the beautiful weather.
Thanks for pulling over to make time for the program. So here we are. We know it's so-called fire season, even though fires can happen at any time. And we've got 11 fires burning in Labrador. We've got one around South Branch here on the island. What's the message this morning, Chief?
Well, the weather patterns have been changing over the last few years. Our fires are becoming more frequent. And they're getting closer to communities. As communities expand out more into forested areas, we're becoming closer to that hazard. And right now, we're in a bit of a bind because it's early in the fire season. All of our resources apparently are stretched to the max, and some resources are out of service. And I know right now people are a little bit frustrated. It's early in the season. We had a lot of rain last week, and now we can't have a backyard fire. But, right now, we need to ask ourselves, what can we do to support our firefighters and the people of Labrador and other areas where fires are happening? And the best thing that we can do for them is make sure that we don't need to take away their resources to come to fires that didn't have to happen.
I mean, there's always going to be some quite innocent mistakes made that might lead to a raging wildfire. But like I heard the minister talking yesterday, even about folks who are out enjoying the great outdoors on their ATV and some of the sparks that can, right behind you, start one of these fires. So what are some of the key tips? Because people understand, if you have a fire in a fire pit, you need to make sure it's completely extinguished before you turn your back on it and stuff like that, and throwing your cigarette butt off to the shoulder of the road, and that could spark a fire. But what are some other things people probably don't think about?
Well, if you're riding your ATV, driving through grassy fields, driving through wooded areas where there's a lot of dead vegetation that you're driving through, dragging chains behind you for some reason, there's a whole bunch of things that can seem innocent enough, and you'd never believe that it could cause an incident. But you mentioned throwing out cigarette butts. That doesn't seem like a big deal, and maybe if we're in the middle of winter, it isn't, but even though we still shouldn't be doing it. But right now, I mean, the vegetation on the sides of the highways are just so dry. And if you're on an ATV trail, it's 10 times worse. So you may not think about that at the time, but all of these little things can make a difference. Even throwing out things like glass. Like, we know we're not supposed to litter, but people still do it. Glass can act like a magnifying glass in the right conditions, and that in itself can start a fire in dry vegetation.
Absolutely. I remember as children, we would use our magnifying glass to set our scribblers on fire. I shouldn't be saying that. But, the black part of the Hilroy scribbler, we'd use the magnifying glass, and you could see it very, very quickly spark.
Oh, yeah, and if you couldn't spell your initials with your magnifying glass, you were behind the times.
Exactly, 100%.
Yeah, we don't think about those things, but they're all important to us, and right now more important than ever, because the risk is just so high, the resources are so low, and they're being stretched to the maximum. And when we hear of communities having to be evacuated, I mean, that is just terrible, terrible stuff. And whatever resources that we can muster up to send to those people, that's what we need to be doing.
Absolutely right. So do you happen to know how many people are trained to be fighting wildfires on the ground here in this province?
No, that's not a number that I have. I wouldn't even venture to guess, Paddy. But I know something that we don't think about a lot is our volunteer firefighters in our communities spend a tremendous amount of time assisting when there's forest fires. Go back to a few years ago when a forest fire came really close to Labrador City and put even the hospital in peril. The volunteer firefighters of that community, they were just weeks on end, volunteering their time to go out there and try to prevent that fire from getting to their community.
Well, let's hope that.
The number.
Sorry, go ahead.
So the number of people that get involved in these things, like if you think about last night, the number of volunteers that had to be set up in Lab City and in Goose Bay to receive people, register them, make sure they got bedding and a place to stay and food to eat. The stretch on your volunteer resources when these things happen is so tremendous. I don't know if you could actually quantify it very easily.
Well, I mean, obviously there's a big mad rush to try to accommodate because the folks in Churchill Falls, they were given 45 minutes to be out of their house. So that's what crept into my mind yesterday. We talk about, well, they're evacuated and the volunteer effort in Happy Valley Goose Bay and the kindness of people to try to bring folks into their home or provide some food or whatever type of support. But just imagine the trauma you go through to be told, okay, 45 minutes from now, you're out of your house. You have to run. And I mean, it must feel like, running for your very life. If they're going to evacuate you, it must mean that things are quite dire. And whoever is working on fire suppression up there, maybe get some cooperation with the weather, but the fact they were able to keep that fire from jumping the river and keep it further away from the community itself, I mean, it's obviously great work. When the Kenmount Terrace was on fire here, whenever that was a few years ago, watching the precision with which the water bombers were effectively suppressing that fire was phenomenal. Remarkable precision.
You can't begin to imagine the work that they're doing. And the boots on the ground, I mean, unless you see it for yourself, you can't fathom the intensity and the difficulty of the work that they have to take on them right now. And hats off to them. I mean, they're doing a wonderful job. They're basically trying to control something that in nature cannot be controlled. And, I mean, whatever we can do to help them, we owe them that.
Yeah, we absolutely do. Chief, I appreciate the time. Anything else before I take a break for the news?
Perfect. Thank you so much, and thank you for bringing light to that situation.
Happy to do it. Stay in touch. Safe travels, Chief.
Take care.
You too. Bye-bye. That's Chief Dwayne Anthell out in Come By Chance, President of the Association of Fire Services. Mark just dropped out. Let's get him back to talk about old age security. And Reg, you stay right there to talk about the recreational food fishery. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 4. Good morning, Reg. You're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy. How are you this morning, my buddy?
That's kind. How about you?
Good for you. Listen, Paddy, I got a question.
Sure.
What is it with Newfoundland and Labrador? My God, what is the secret about our recreational fishery? I've been on the phone now this morning. I made a call to Elvis Lovelace. He's the Minister of Fishery. Of course, he left the building, like the old saying. I never got to speak with him. I spoke with a lady there. And she didn't have a clue what to tell me. She said, well, unfortunately, she said, we were supposed to know yesterday, the 20th, but nothing else happened. I said, well, have you got any clue what time we're going to find out? And she said, well, no, sir, I couldn't tell you. Now, she provided me with 3 more different phone numbers. I called. Nobody knew what I was talking. Nobody had a clue what time it was going to open. I called the Federal Fisheries in Ottawa. I spoke to a gentleman there. He didn't even know where Newfoundland was. So now I just kind of said, well, there's not much point in talking to him, about our recreational food fishery. But, Paddy, why is this every year? It's so secretive. It just boggles my mind why we got to go through this. Why don't they just come out, make the announcement? Do they realize people got a life? You got to make plans for this. People work. We do work here. And you got to make plans for, when you're going to go out and to get your vote ready and do different things and what have you. And nobody seems to know anything. It's like a guessing game. We're all guessing and waiting. So have you got anything? I've been listening. I listen to your program every day. I never miss it. And I haven't heard nothing from, and I know a few people inquiring about it, but nobody seems to know anything. Have you got anything to update the people of this great province? Or?
No, I don't. That's the short answer on that one. And I have no earthly idea why it takes so long. Someone from DFO has said, there's a variety of things. So their survey finishes up before Christmas. COD assessment happens in mid to late March. Then you have all the stakeholder consultations. Then the memo goes to the federal minister responsible. And that sometimes takes somewhere around 8 weeks to get a ministerial decision. But come on, let's get real here. There might be a lot of moving parts, but the fact of the matter is, no one can tell me that they already don't know exactly what it's going to be this year. Last year was on the 20th of June and it opened on the 1st of July. So I guarantee you that this decision has been made a long time ago. Why they wait to tell us, I have absolutely no idea. And on top of people working and just the frustration with all the silence and the 11th hour decision, apparently this is also a very real thing. Some folks who are planning their trip home, they'd like to know exactly when it's going to be. Now, I would suggest it's going to be very similar to last year.
Yes.
From the 1st of July to Labor Day and then back for the September fall fishery. But just let us know. I mean, come on.
Exactly, Paddy, and like I say, you're exactly right. You know as well as I do. I mean, DFO knows what time it is. They already know, but why so secretive? I mean, it's not. It's a recreational fishery. We're going to go out and get a few fish and enjoy the day on the water, and everything is hunky dory. I mean, it's not a big deal. I mean, I'm going to tell you, I got a food trailer here now, and I got a lot of people come to my trailer from all different parts of Canada. And I ask them about, blah, 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 they like Newfoundland and the hospitality and this and that. And they come down. They love everything about the rock and what have you. And they're probably going to stay for the recreational fishery. And they don't know. And they got friends of theirs that's going to come down and meet them or whatever. And a few people have asked me, and I'm from Newfoundland. I should know. And I can't give them an answer. Well, I said it's probably going to be the 1st of July, but nobody knows anything. I don't know, Paddy. It's just it's a joke. That's what it is, Paddy, as far as I'm concerned. I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to call Trump, because he got lots of secret documents from the White House down in Mar-a-Lago. Who knows? He might have something down there from the House of Assembly, and he might be able to tell me, because he probably knows more about it than we do. So, anyway, that's my topic for today, my son. And come on, people who's ever running DFO, for God's sakes, wake up, smell the coffee, get your ducks in a row, and let's get with the program. This is it's ludicrous. So, you have a good day, buddy. Keep up the good work, because without you, we're going to be all off.
I appreciate it, Reg.
Take care, my son.
Stay in touch. Have a nice weekend.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye. Let's keep rolling here. Let's go to line number 5. Say good morning to the Liberal member for Lake Melville. That's Perry Trimper. Good morning, Perry. You're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy.
Welcome to the show. So what are we seeing?
Well, let's talk about the fire, eh? This morning, the situation is certainly much improved from 24 hours ago, and certainly from Wednesday. We had an early morning conference call. The Premier leads, along with the CEO of NL Hydro and senior officials, Minister Lovelace and others from the Department of Forestry. So we're in a much better place. The suppression activities were very effective yesterday, keeping the fire on the south side of the community, south side of the river, and away from the community and away from the hydro project. The winds have been cooperating, although just chatting with some folks there this morning, and they are shifting around to the west, and they're whipping, we're gusting, and it's these winds in combination with the wind direction that is causing a lot of the anxiety and the challenge that we're facing. That said, additional water bombers arrived last night from Quebec, two water bombers, and we're expecting 2 more from Ontario. I'm thinking any minute now, kind of looking towards the airport, and they'll be landing soon. So that'll put our fleet to tackle this challenge up to 8, along with all the associated crews and so on. So a pretty robust team, but we still need Mother Nature to cooperate with us.
Obviously, so maybe get some cooperation with the wind from the west slowing down. And, I heard someone talk about the fact that when they got evacuated, driving away from their home in Churchill Falls into what the gentleman said was like the apocalypse, driving into the thunder and lightning storms and all the worries attached to it. So everywhere you look at it is really quite a troubling situation. Bravo to whoever's out there fighting that particular fire. Excellent news overnight that it hadn't hopped across the river, because if that was the case when we woke up this morning, this conversation would be much different.
would it ever, Patty? We started thinking about this about a week ago. And actually 2 weeks ago when the fires broke out on Route 138 coming north of Bay Como, and the season was really forecast here to be a challenging one for us. Last week when those fires started to occur in that Churchill Falls area and started to deal with it, we started touching base, all the different organizations, and thinking about that disaster scenario that you might have to have an evacuation order. And it was still surreal, though, to hear it. My phone rang around a little after 7 on Wednesday evening, and we were putting that in place. And it was very surreal, but it went incredibly. It was a smooth bunch of chaos. But your word apocalyptic is how I described it, because as we were standing outside the YMCA where we set up our registration point and center there on Wednesday night. So folks started arriving around 11 o'clock as this thunder and lightning storm that none of us have ever witnessed in our lives to that intensity was happening at the same time. So big, long line of cars, hundreds of people, and an apocalyptic thunder and lightning storm to boot with the wind and the rain that did come. It was all quite something. But that said, the hospitality was there, the compassion was there, and so hotels, family, friends, and then this wonderful aspect that's been fun to talk about, I'm very proud to talk about, is the number of families that were there just to pick up strangers and say, come and stay with us, we'll take good care of you tonight. It was all very nice.
How are people being housed? Like, are there actually people sleeping at the YMCA, or has everyone been taken in? What's happening?
So, when we knew we could be dealing with well over 700 folks, so we started to prepare. We had 3 hours while folks made that drive from Churchill Falls to Happy Valley Goose Bay. So we started setting up our shelters and, amassing literally the hundreds of mattresses, bedding that we were going to need, where we were going to put them, and so on. So we were starting to put that all in action. However, well over 80% were able to find hotels and, again, rooms with friends, family, and other families that were just standing in the parking lot, and after they'd registered, said that they were safe and sound. They were just going with perfect strangers and staying. So we ended up with about 86 that we put up at the YMCA. We had a big open gymnasium, a couple of rooms there that we outfitted with beds and mattresses, and so those 86 primarily were contractors and might not have had the family contacts or knew the folks, mostly from Newfoundland, and we were able to. NL Hydro had charters arranged yesterday morning, so they moved about 100 of them back to Newfoundland yesterday. So that's taken a lot of the pressure off. And we were able to close the YMCA last night. So we still have many hundreds of people here, but they're staying again mostly in people's homes.
Which is fantastic. I've heard people guessing that maybe they won't be away from Churchill Falls for much longer. Of course, that's all going to depend on the fire and the crews fighting this particular fire. But I heard someone say this morning that, maybe in a couple of days there'll be more update about maybe being able to go home by early next week. So we hope that's the case, because that would mean that the fire is either completely under control or has been extinguished.
I invite anyone to just go look at Environment Canada forecast for the next several days, and you'll see it's really too early to make that kind of prediction. The next several days, I'm seeing, unfortunately, the winds tomorrow are coming out of the west, which is our red direction. Our red danger direction. We're not don't want to see that. It's going to push the fire. If it's in the valley now, we need to keep it south of the river. But if it pushes it down the river, then it really gets into the community and the project. So next few days, no precipitation, westerly winds. It's going to be challenging. So we are very thankful for this interprovincial agreement, which allows, we've been both a provider and now the receiver of resources between jurisdictions to tackle these fires that are coming more and more frequently and with more intensity.
And we know there's still some 40 people on site, whether it be law enforcement or firefighters, and people try to keep the operations at the generating station going. So we hope they're okay and they can be moved at a moment's notice if and when the things or circumstances change.
Yes, they've got a checklist that they will go through, and I've had elements of that described to me as to how they will essentially shut down the operations as much as they can and work with it as much as they can remotely. And El Hydro's priority is its staff and people and their safety. So that's uppermost in the planning. What's been interesting for me, Patty, as the MHA here, is the number of interviews I've been doing in French, particularly with great interest from Quebec and elsewhere, with the realization of the importance of this facility for their power demands, as well as most of Labrador and beyond. We do provide 15% of Hydro-Quebec's total power capacity. So it's a big player, and it's of great importance to a lot of folks beyond this province.
Absolutely, and of course, we need to thank the other provinces. We were quite generous with our resources last year, whether it be in Nova Scotia or elsewhere in the country, fighting forest fires. And so 2 bombers from Ontario, 2 bombers from Quebec, and of course, they also share a geographical concern with what's happening in Labrador. Before we let you go, and it always pops in my mind as soon as I read your district's name, is tell us once again, and I asked you this last time, about the ongoing monitoring of methylmercury downstream into the estuary.
I haven't looked at the latest, but I'm quite sure, and I would hear if there had been any change. But no, the levels continue to be monitored each month, and they're posted on the Environment and Climate Change provincial site. I can always give you that link, I think, provided next time, but I can do it again. If people want to go in and see, the levels are coming in actually just as predicted, of no concern for the health and safety for anyone consuming food groups from Lake Melville. When you go to flood an area, whether it be naturally or through creating a hydroelectric project, methylmercury will be generated. It's just what happens when you put water over an organic material. So that's going to occur. The levels are, as many scientists, including myself, have predicted, coming in again at a level that is not of concern for human health consumption. So it continues to be monitored very seriously. It's certainly the most intensive monitoring program I would suggest is occurring anywhere in the world around a hydro project. I
appreciate the time this morning, Perry. Thank you.
Thanks, Patty, for all that the OCM's doing. Thank you. Bye.
My pleasure. Bye-bye. All right, there we go. It's Perry Trimper, the member for Lake Melville. Let's take a break. When we get back, Mike's in the queue to talk about a fish plant license. Where? We'll find out. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 6. Good morning, Mike. You're on the air.
Hey, Patty. Good morning. Patty, before I begin, I want to give a certain recognition to those people that are doing such a wonderful job of dealing with Churchill Falls fire down there. I have family down there, and I know how serious and how stressful that is. So to see people like Mr. Trimper and others and all those firefighters have done such a wonderful job, I don't think we can give them enough kudos, for their work. I would like, Patty, and once again, you had a caller a few moments ago, I was waiting, who talked about the recreational fishery, I think, the recreational food fishery.
Yep.
So, Patty, in a world that's so focused on food insecurity, in a nation that's so focused on food insecurity, and fish is food, it always has been. It's been a communal resource before it became a commercial trading thing. The Federal Department of Fisheries has labeled people in the community going out to get fish. Now, this is for food. It's not for resale. They don't resell this stuff. And all of the years I operated seafood shops, about 10, I never had somebody come in from a food fishery and try to sell me fish. I had lots of commercial fishermen do it, but that's what they did. But yet DFO, in its wisdom or lack of it, has labeled this a recreational fishery. Like we're standing on a riverbank and hook and release salmon, or this is the big. Let's everybody go out and have some fun and have a recreational food fishery. Nowhere else would tolerate this. How stupid are they at all? How, they're in a bunker. You can't speak to them. They're not accountable, DFO, in the bunker.
Mike, before we go any further, what's your problem with the way that they label this particular fishery? Like, I go out of my way to call it the recreational food fishery every single time, but what's your actual concern with the label?
This is a food fishery. This is not a let's have some fun and go catch some cod. There's nothing recreational about this. This is food. This fish is used as food. Not a hook and release. It's a food fishery. And this was cooked up in Ottawa by some bureaucrats, and I believe that's were in the days of, if I remember correctly, Loyola Hearn. And I think the union had a part in it. And they wanted to, they don't want anybody else out there. The nice, tidy package for DFO enforcement. They love monitoring. They love enforcing rules. So let's all go and we'll call it a recreational fishery. Not only is it demeaning to those who use the catch for food, it's really ridiculous. And it portrays us as, we're all going to have some fun and catch some kind of an endangered stock. That's not the case at all. It's food, Patty. It's not recreational food, although it's been named that by DFO. It's a food fishery. And that's exactly what it is. Anyway, Patty, I didn't come to really have a talk about that. But it's tied in a way, I guess. And maybe I missed your program from time to time. Work into life interferes, and I don't get a chance to hear you like I'd like to. There was an application by, I think it's called the Fisheries Protective Co-op, and to put a processing facility in the Bay Bird area, White Bay area, Florida Lee in particular, I think, to handle cod, to process cod and other species. And it was turned down. Now, you may recall a short while ago, we had a very significant protest up on Signal Hill in the crab price negotiations. And one of the big issues that was free enterprise, right? And the province committed to lifting its restrictions on plants. So, Patty, maybe you can help me. I might have missed this. What's the rationale they used to turn it down? There's no processing plants down there right now for these people. So maybe you can help me why they turned it down.
I don't know, but I suppose when we talk about carts and horses, until we even understand what the total allowable catch is going to be for the commercial fishery this year, a new processing license, I don't even know if there's enough fish to go around because they're talking about expanding it up to maybe 25,000 tons. So I suppose until we know how much cod can be caught, we won't know how much cod we're going to need to process. I suppose. Now, I can't offer rationale because I'm not in the room. I have nothing to do with it, but that might be part of it.
Yeah, well, I've been at that industry for about, in one way or another, from the engine rooms to the boardrooms for about 25 years. And I suggest to you that this is political. This is not tied into, what's the quota going to be. We're importing people now, temporary foreign workers. One time, if you worked in the Department of Fisheries, I did. The processors, the plant owners, could walk into the door, walk down into the minister's office, kick the feet up on the desk, and say, if you give something to somebody, I'm not going to process, and all these people who are not going to get their stamps this year are going to be thumb ticked off with you and the politicians, and they get their way. So what's happening now, we've had a huge amount of these processing facilities closed. And the ones that are there, we've got an aging population in rural Newfoundland, Labrador, and they're stacking them with, temporary foreign workers, or they're shipping off. So I think it's more tied into politics. I think it's a bit of an embarrassment. I think the people of White Bay, Bay Bird, Florida Lee deserve better. They can twist statistics however they want. But if there's 5 harvesters in the area that want a place to sell their cod without having to transport it out somewhere, they should have the right under this free enterprise union keeps talking about to do it. They should be able to do it right there. There's a facility there. There's a trained workforce there. There's a company. It's a co-op of all things for harvesters. They should be able to do it. Patty, this business about, I'm going to back up a little bit, on the food fishery. The lack of willingness of DFO, I agree with you. They've known this for weeks, if not months, when this is going to be. But the lack of willingness to make it known so that some people can plan their trips home and others can do it. What kind of, it's got to be arrogance. You've got to hold somebody. Seamus O'Regan's a representative in Canada. Surely you can bring him on and say, Seamus, you're the representative at that table. What the heck is going on? This is your province. Why can't DFO come out and allow people to plan? What's the big secret that they can't release some dates as to when they plan? They're already restricted dates, a minimal amount compared to other provinces. So why can't we do this?
I don't know.
So there's no pressure.
So, like, in this world, and there might be some potential exaggeration about people's travel and whatnot, because I think you can bet pretty safely that if your travel is planned for the middle of July to the middle of August and straddles a couple of weekends, you're in luck. Because it's going to be sometime early July to Labor Day, very likely again this year. So travel, if you book in those aforementioned 30-day window, you're going to get some opportunity to go out for a bit of cod. And I don't know what Seamus can say about it, but even the minister responsible, Le Boutier, if someone could give us just any basic explanation, is there some sort of connection with the announcement of the commercial fishery? Is it because of the lag time between survey after Christmas and the cod stock assessment and which I think is probably quasi-gibberish as well, given the fact that year over year it's been virtually identical dates and identical quotas for the recreational food fishery. So I don't know, I'm not buying any of the arguments. And it might come across something like someone sent me an email saying, why is everyone so whiny about this? It's just the frustration of why it's so late in the day all the time. That's all it is for me. It doesn't really affect me one way or the other. I'll go out once, maybe twice, like I do every year. But other than that, I just can't understand the 11th hour approach year after year after year.
Yeah, I suggest to Seamus, I might be unfair to him, maybe it's Goody, but, if Deanna Boutier will not speak to us, maybe, just maybe, Seamus or Goody or somebody has her phone number and can give her a call, can speak for her, because obviously we're not getting through to her, and she's not reacting to pressure that this open line, which has such a huge following, and congratulations, you do such a great job on it, but she's not reacting to that. So maybe, just maybe, those people we got representing our interests in Ottawa say, you know what, maybe not for people coming home, but for people wanting to eat food, it's an important part of their history, their heritage. For God's sake, cut these so stubborn and give us a date.
Appreciate the time, Mike.
It's been wonderful. Thank you so much.
Take care.
Pleasure to speak.
All the best. Bye-bye. All right. Apologize. The connection wasn't great there. Let's go to line 3 before the break. Gord, you're on the air.
Good day, Paddy. How are you doing?
Top shelf. How about you?
Great. Paddy, I'm out for a bike ride. I found a pair of jeans by a certain band. Now, I have this one. On the road, bought a band. Figuring someone was boating. Lost her jeans out of the boat. I got the IDs, and if I can give you his name, where is he from, and he can call me, and he can get his IDs, his bank card, and everything, all that.
Yeah, what should we do here? Greg, give out a name, I suppose. Give me a first name. Let's go with that.
Okay, his name is Matthew.
Okay, Matthew. What pound?
Was by Paddy's pond. Matthew is from Witless Bay, to let you know.
Okay, Matthew from Witless Bay. If you lost your jeans and your ID, Gord has it. You want to give out your number, Gord?
He should have it, 7699905.
Okay.
His first name is Matthew McGrath, Cecil Matthew McGrath.
Okay, well, there's a full name. So maybe, did you check and see if he wasn't in the pond swimming before he took his jeans?
There was no one swimming, not yesterday, no.
Okay. I appreciate the time. Matthew, we've got your jeans and your wallet and your ID. Thanks for this, Gord.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, man. All the best. Bye-bye.
Have a good Friday and a safe weekend.
You too. Thank you, Gord. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah, and hopefully Matthew didn't come back from a dip thinking, who took my jeans? I don't know. Gord says no one was swimming. That's good enough for me. Let's take a break. I think we got a caller coming up to talk about the fact that for the first time in this province, there's going to be a new cooperative on what? Funeral homes. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 2. Good morning, caller. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How about you?
Good, fine, thank you. We were speaking earlier the week regarding the NAPE rally that we're going to probably have, and actually regarding another issue from earlier the week.
Is this about the home care issue?
Yes, it is. Sorry, yes.
All right.
Yes. So on June the 27th, here in Clarenville, we will be holding a rally and having a list there for people to sign petitions. It will be on the main area of Shoal Harbour Drive. between Winging It and Scotiabank.
Okay. And so just remind the folks exactly where we are and why the need for this particular rally.
We are fighting for better wages, more recognition than what we are being given, and for also our sister who has been suspended until indefinitely until further notice and until the process goes through with her fighting for our rights for a better wage and. Well, for everything, like with regards to home care, like we are at the bottom of the barrel, and so are our wages. So this is what we're going to fight for, and also for our clients who are our number one priority.
Well, you know, whether we talk about wages, and of course collective bargaining is going to be sticky at the best of times, but when you've got, 22 different negotiators representing 22 different agencies, and this, the biggest story out of all this, and easy for me to say, but the most fascinating to me, is how anybody thought they were going to be able to get away with suspending somebody because of their role as a negotiator in collective bargaining. That's unbelievable.
Well, when you're voicing your opinion for everybody, and everybody in home care industry, that's like, why would you single out one person, right? If it was somebody else on the other side of the fence, I don't understand the method to the madness of doing this, but we are going to fight for her suspension or with her suspension, and like I said, we want to get this out and open and not hide this underneath a rock.
100%. Give the folks the details, the where the wins one more time.
So it will be on Thursday, June the 27th at 4 o'clock between Wingamut and Clarenville Scotiabank on Shoal Harbour Drive at 4 o'clock.
Appreciate the time. Keep me in the loop.
Thank you very much. We will do. Take care. Have a good day and a great weekend.
You too. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah, that home care issue, that is the furthest thing from done. And again, when you just step back, it might be me, it might be you someday that needs it. And all the issues, well, it doesn't necessarily have to be all about seniors either, right? So, but on that front, it's hard to understand how we've got people at the governmental level who are not even at the table for this piece of collective bargaining, which I don't understand, period. But all the thoughts about not only trying to save money, but to keep people where they're most comfortable and happiest, and yet we can't figure out a way to provide the necessary home care support. Because, again, I've said this many times because I think it's on the money. Just let's do a calculation. How much does it cost to have someone in a long-term care facility annually versus what it would cost for the required home support in their home? We come out on top on all fronts, I think, if we get this right. Let's go to line number 4. Good morning, Wayne. You're on the air.
Good day, Paddy. How you doing?
I'm okay, I suppose. How about you?
Yes.
Wayne? That was a quick one. Dave, should I just put him on hold and you see what's going on there? Yeah, okay, let's do that. Yeah, because, all that conversation, and it does come across as a little bit catchphrasy, and I'm not talking about when advocates like Susan Walsh use it, but when politicians in particular use it, it's got to be some more meat on that bone. Aging in place. It sounds great. It sounds like the right idea. We see the numbers across the country. Seniors are staying in their home longer in life than ever before. And, of course, as you age, it's just kind of part and parcel with the potential to need some additional supports. Right? And some of the ads about home care have also been, I think, a little bit misleading, and for some home care workers, possibly a little bit insulting, is when it's simply depicted as, well, just having a cup of tea, or having a game of canasta, or just shooting the breeze, or whatever, when in fact some of the tasks that are assigned to home care workers can be really quite something, and really seriously important, whether it be on the medical side, in addition to the loneliness and the companionship, which of course happens organically, but some of the tasks are absolutely massive, and not everyone's cut out to be one. And if we're seeing home care workers less than interested in continuing for a variety of reasons, maybe conditions and the physical nature of their tasks and or the rate of pay, of course, who wants to take on really important, difficult, possibly traumatic tasks if you're going to be paid so poorly? Because at this moment in time, they absolutely are paid poorly. And the contract offer, of course, you don't need me to tell you, 54% of those who voted, which was a low voter turnout compared to the 4,000 plus home care workers that could have voted. I think some 1,800 was all that actually cast a vote. But 54% of them said nope. And it wasn't just about wages either. When you talk about medical benefits, benefits is one of the concerns concerns that people will always ask about when entertaining, whether it be applying for a job or a job offer. And their medical benefits, which would be a 50-50 cost share, they were told that by the time the insurance companies actually implemented them in full, it would take a full year. Contrast that to the early childhood educators. When their medical benefits conversation was ongoing, they thought that maybe in 3 months they'd be fully implemented. So I'm not sure exactly why it's so different for different groups. Let's try again. Line number 4. Wayne, you're on the air.
Okay, Paddy, can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Go right ahead, sir.
The wonders of modern technology.
Yep.
Anyway, Paddy, a little while ago, you and I had a quick chat about this goings-on in the Middle East there between Israel and the Palestinian people, I guess. And I suggested then, or I was thinking then, that this issue is not about Hamas or terrorism. The real issue here, I believe, is about land. And I've been following what the Israeli army has been doing there on the West Bank and in Gaza. And every day I'm more and more convinced that that's what the real issue is about land again. And this will never end, I don't think, until either Netanyahu has been replaced or some other miracle happens in that area. But over that last 2 or 3 months, I've been watching painfully, really, what the people in Gaza, Palestinian people, are being exposed to. Starvation, no water, no sewer systems, no food, can't get the food distribution in. All of it really impeded by the Israeli government. And I'm wondering, why is that allowed to continue, really?
A couple of quick notes. So if it's about land, I mean, the Gaza Strip is a pretty small piece of land, some 360 square kilometers. So maybe. And when you talk about water, sanitation, or the sewer system, and just basic infrastructure, 67% of it all has been destroyed since the 7th of October.
Yeah, well, that's an incredible amount. If you can imagine living here in our own area with 67% of the major infrastructure blown up and non-usable, I think we would have a serious problem here. But imagine in a poor country with no real government, it seems, functioning government, and then you have this to face, and you have children your schools are blown up, kids are there with nowhere to go, and I can't see how they can have much hope for the future unless something significant changes down there. And I don't see that happening anytime soon unless, and I think what the Israeli government is going to be faced with real soon is a real problem of their own making, because instead of destroying terrorists, they are creating more terrorists every day all around the world as people watch this inhumanity being served upon the Palestinian people by the Israeli government.
And I will say that, of course, these conversations have proven to be very difficult to navigate, because if you talk about what's happening on the ground and the realities on the ground for Palestinians who are not Hamas terrorists, look, Hamas is a terrorist organization. October the 7th was a terrorist attack. But that does not mean that if you are talking about, in the Rafah crossing, they're talking about the humanitarian aid and the ability to cross at Rafah. That's been destroyed. So that does not make anyone anti-Semitic necessarily in my book to talk about what's happening. And nor is it about cheering for Hamas. I'll get the same email from the same bunch of fellows who send me the same stuff all the time, and they'll say, yeah, you're cheerleading for a terrorist organization. No, that's not it at all. We're talking about reality, and 67% of the Gaza Strip has been razed at this point, and no real leadership or governance. You're absolutely right. Hamas has been the so-called government for 18 years. Half of the population of the Gaza Strip is under the age of 18, so they had nothing to do with it. And yes, Hamas have been shielding themselves with human beings and public infrastructure like schools, like hospitals, so there's a lot of blame and concern and questions to go around.
Paddy, if they were not doing that, and I'm sure I'm not sure, but I imagine that you've seen the images coming out of Gaza and that area there, and if I were a military man, I can't think where I would hide from the incredible armaments of the Israeli military. There's nowhere to go. I mean, you have to go underground somewhere. Otherwise, you're totally open. You're a sitting duck all the time for, those modern weapons of war now. And I'm not really trying to make excuses or try to cover the butts of anybody in a mosque, but I mean, where would you go as a military person?
I'm 100% sure I don't care about that. If they were sitting ducks, fair enough. I would hope that most people would think that if every terrorist was a sitting duck and out there in plain sight for all to see, that we could eliminate the actual threat before we have to have all this destruction alongside.
Yes, I agree, Paddy. But anyway, it looks like now from latest news that what is going to erupt in the Middle East is already starting to occur with another so-called terrorist group across the border in a different country. And I suspect, and I fear that if Israel can't find a peaceful way out of all of this, then is going to be warfare forever over there. And Netanyahu had a lot of opportunity to change the water on the bean, so to speak, but he refused to do it for whatever interest you can only speculate on. And I think if they don't get something done soon, this war will broaden, and it will be much worse situation for all the people of Israel and all the people in the area. And peace is always a better option than war, in my view.
I think the people would nod along in agreement to that. I appreciate the time, Wayne. Thanks for the call.
Okay, buddy.
Take care, man. Bye-bye. And the word I was looking for that I couldn't find at the moment was, the associated damage. Well, of course, what I was trying to say is collateral damage. That's the term. Let's take a break. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number one. Say good morning to the Liberal member for Gander. He's the Minister of Municipal and Provincial Affairs. That's Dr. John Haggie. Minister Haggie, you're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy. Thanks for taking my call. I rang to talk about our unknown soldier wreath grants, but I think before I start, I'd like to do two other things. One is to thank Gary Gazine for 35 years as mayor. I take my hat off to anybody who did that job for 35 years, and I hope he enjoys his retirement. It's well deserved. The second thing is just to acknowledge the communities of Goose Bay and Lab City, as well as some other Labrador municipalities who've helped out in Churchill Falls. It's been a very difficult time there, but the work you could see coming out of Goose Bay and Lab City to help those evacuees is really heartening, and it's one of the things this province does well. So thank you very much, and hopefully it'll be back to normal soon.
Yeah, and not to be a schoolmarm, but of course Gary Gazine was in public life as an elected member for 35 years. 29 of those were as mayor, which is also remarkable.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, it's not an easy job, and we've heard a lot about the difficulties that the elected officials and councillors and MHAs and MPs experience these days, which is new, and I think it's worthy of commendation for even 29 years. So, look, we have a major event coming up on the 1st of July, which is the repatriation of a member of what was then the Newfoundland Regiment, what is now the Royal Newfoundland Regiment, back home. Not everybody, though, is going to be able to get there. A lot of people want to go. What we have done through our department is any community, be it LSD or town, who want to lay a wreath to commemorate the event will get a grant from the department up to a value of $100. Basically, all they have to do is get a receipt for the wreath and take a photograph on the 1st of July of someone in the community laying that wreath and send it to us by the 12th of next month, and we'll give them the money back. We want to encourage all communities of any size to recognise this and acknowledge that not everybody can be on Water Street and Duckworth Street on the 1st of July. It's an important event.
Of course it is. And I've heard from many different communities that they're actually having their wreath-laying ceremonies the day before so that they can send some representatives to Water Street and the National War Memorial on the 1st of July, which I'm not surprised.
No, and I think we would like to help them mark that occasion, and we have, it's not first come, first served, it's any community that has a receipt and sends us a picture will get the money.
Okay, let's move on to some issues inside your portfolio. So we know that there's new municipal guidance. When we talk about legislation, it's the Town and Local Service Districts Act, I'm pretty sure. And one of the main goals was to do away with some of the red tape and, of course, the poll taxes. Is it fully implemented? How are communities working with this new piece of legislation?
The regulations had to be written. In actual fact, for towns, they were just basically updated and ported from the old Act. For LSDs, there were none, so we had to write those from scratch. The Act will come into force on the 1st of January 2025, okay. And the period between now and then will be used for training in the same way that we did with previous legislative changes. Quite a number of councils tend to lapse their activities over July and August, so we've got plenty of time still into the fall to organise those training sessions. We managed to train 3,000 councillors in a similar period for the Municipal Code of Conduct Act. So we're expecting that we'll be able to do the same for the Town and Local Service Districts Act by implementation date.
Yeah, business taxes also going to change, and they can go with property taxes similar to what I pay here, straight mill rates and what have you. There's also some changes about the ability to operate recreational facilities.
Yes, at the moment, LSDs can charge fees for services that they provide in terms of firefighting, in terms of water and sewer. Now we've added recreation into that. LSDs do not have the authority to levy taxes in the way that municipalities do, recognizing that their governance structure and accountability mechanisms would be too onerous for them to do that, maybe. And a lot of them prefer not to do it anyway. But this gives them the opportunity to move into recreational space as well.
You mentioned LSDs, and of course they were one of the loudest voices in opposition to all the work that had been done regarding regionalisation. The department eventually just said, well, we're not going to follow it any further here. What has it been replaced by? Because there's going to be the need for some collaboration. We see it up on the Great Northern Peninsula, whether it be between Engley and Conch and Hawke's Bay, I think it was. But at some point, there's got to be some provincial guidance here about collaboration and cooperation, because the thought was, I'm going to lose my heritage, I'm going to lose my community, and all those things which may or may not have been true. So is there any work to replace what regionalisation might have looked like? Because it seems to me that unless we have official collaborative approaches to a variety of things, we're going to be wasting money and duplicating resources as opposed to trying to advance the cause wherever we're talking about, the Southwest Coast, the Great Northern Peninsula, or Bjorn or Bonavista.
No, you're quite right. Collaboration is the key here. Regionalisation as a form of governance structure was not greeted with enthusiasm by a lot of communities. It was pushed by some and not by a lot more. So what we did last year was we put in place some regional collaboration grants as a kind of test bed to see how those kind of projects would run. Those have all been awarded. They are running for this year, and we'll be in a position to evaluate those in the not too distant future. At the same time, we have other pieces of legislation and other opportunities we think we can use to encourage regional collaboration or area collaboration. We have, for example, the regional services boards in certain areas, particularly on the Avalon, that are actually kind of under contract to provide firefighting services for a fee for LSDs or for a revenue stream from some towns. So there are scope there. There is scope there to broaden that. So what we're doing is conducting an extensive review of that piece of legislation to see if we can use bits of it that were never used to do that. We do it with waste management, and it seems to be working well in some areas and not so well in others. So we need to look to see how to improve that. But you're right. Collaboration between communities is the key to getting capacity to do the things they can't do at the moment.
Okay, last one, because I do have to get to the news. So, we'll hear the spats between communities, or that's not the right way to say it. There will be concerns regarding government services, especially when we talk about the ferries. And so I know that the provincial department has changed some of the thresholds for the difficult conversations surrounding relocation. Reduced the threshold from 90% in favour to 75% in favour for the obvious reasons. Even though some votes have been successful, I'll call it, the government has denied because they didn't achieve those savings over 20 years. But what role does your department play? I mean, because I do think that some guidance or leadership, because basically for some small communities, and I'm not one who says let's just empty out all the bays, because that doesn't make any sense either, but the writing is on the wall for some areas. It simply is. What's your role for the government? Because if we're just going to sit back and organically watch communities face their own demise, then like everything else in this world, it's an after the fact, knee-jerk, chaotic, more costly process, if that's what's allowed to happen, versus some honest, pragmatic, albeit difficult conversations.
No, I think you're right, Paddy. These are difficult conversations, and the writing is on the wall for some communities. I think our job is to help those communities that are struggling, which are actually not in that situation, and we do have some of those. I do think that the changes that we've made have at the moment made it an issue for the communities themselves to come to grips with. It's not for some communities a matter for us as a government to mandate that they have to go.
But I'm not talking forced relocation, because that obviously came with a multitude of problems.
It did indeed, and I mean, you can see a scenario, and I mean, there are communities now that argue that the wrong ones were relocated, and yes, there are issues with ferries. There's no doubt about it. My colleagues struggle with that, but again, we struggle as an island, Newfoundland itself, with connectivity. We have our own big ferry, and that's a problem. Argentia and Marine Atlantic are never run to the satisfaction of our citizens. We have a huge challenge with air connectivity, and so we just, as a province, got those problems writ larger. And you're right, there are difficult conversations to be had about sustainability. But there is also some honest conversations about efforts to make rural areas sustainable, which perhaps we haven't been as diligent with in the past as we should have. And certainly, as a representative of a more rural district, I'm very keen to see investment in my own district, just like any other MHA, because there are things that can be done to make our districts, our rural areas, more sustainable, not just dependent on tourism.
Fair enough. We're late for the news. I appreciate the time.
You're welcome. Take care, Paddy.
Okay,
bye-bye.
Dr. Haggie is the Liberal member for Gander, Minister of Provincial and Municipal Affairs. Let's take a break for the news. When we come back, we're talking about ATVs. Jennifer's got an issue down in the gut, not in her belly, down in Kitty Bitty. Don't go away.
You're listening to a rebroadcast of VOCM Open Line. Have your say by calling 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626 and listen live weekday mornings at 9 a.m.
Welcome back to the program. Let's go to line number 2. Say good morning to the president of the Newfoundland Trailways Association. That's Rick Noseworthy. Hi, Rick. You're on the air.
Hi, good morning, Paddy. How are you?
Not too bad, thanks. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. Appreciate the opportunity to get on, talk a little bit about, fire safety in such a hot spell we're going through now with the relation to ATVs.
Absolutely. So when they talk about the proper screening, I think is what they said, and a baffling device, so exactly how does that work?
Okay, Paddy, what it's called is it's a spark arrestor. And it's a wire mesh that's inside your muffler. And a lot of times, over time, that gives trouble, and the wire mesh burns through and all that. And
Rick?
Things that you don't realize that it's there until you need it.
Okay, and so over time, is there a sort of a predictable time frame which that might be the case?
Paddy, I've never had to replace one. So, they're not a common thing. Now, one of the problems that we can have this time of year, of all time, a lot of the motocross bikes don't have spark arresters, and they're really not trail legal, and it's a very, very hard decision and even hard to identify. Like one time back in our day, the two-stroke bikes, the ones, they were the motocross bikes, and the four-stroke bikes were the trail bikes. But a lot of these machines do not have spark arresters. So, and a lot of times too, with aftermarket exhausts, don't have spark arresters. So you need to be aware of that. And, this time of year, you want to stay on the hard-packed trails. When you go off into, bog and peat, when you come out of that in the heat of your exhaust, in the heat of your engine, you're dropping charcoal. And, that's very important this time of year to stay away from that stuff. Stay on the trail, stay on the hard-packed stuff where you're not picking up something that can ignite.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, I know we've got to cross all the T's and dot all the I's when we talk about our own personal responsibility to avoid starting one of these fires inadvertently, but is something like a spark from the ATV, do we understand that to actually be the case for some wildfires in the past, or is this just an example of trying to cover all the bases?
Well, Paddy, we're just trying to cover off. I can't speak of an example. I'm sure over time, vehicles started fires, but, I'm not talking anything specific because I just don't know. Not probably, but I just don't know.
Yeah, I have no idea either. Anything else on the ATV front this morning, Rick?
Yeah, Paddy, more so on the trailway front. We're getting a lot of issues on the trailway with vehicle access. And it's getting to the point that there's some parts of the province that they actually call and complain that I can't get my car on the trailway because the barricades are there. And, it is illegal to operate a motor vehicle on the trailway unless you have a permit. And I think at times that this gets overlooked. And, we get calls on it. Look, we know we're having trouble with brush control. There's no doubt. Alders are, one of our biggest priorities. But, we get calls that I can't get my pickup through the alders. Well, your pickup is not supposed to be on the trailway getting through the alders. We have enough trouble trying to get side-by-sides and ATVs through the alders. So, it's one thing you need to be aware of, that if you're operating a vehicle on this trailway and something serious happens, you could be in risk of not being covered under your insurance because you were operating in an area where you're not supposed to operate. And if this gets in the hands of lawyers, and there's, say, an ATV and a vehicle collide, the ATV is allowed to be there. And when it comes back to it, they say, but the operator of the vehicle said, well, you shouldn't even be there. We're not going to cover you. So it's not just a matter of you not being on it. There's a reason, and then you shouldn't be on it because you're really you're not allowed. It's not an approved area for vehicles, and I know that we're getting a lot of calls this time of year about that.
I bet you are. Who's responsible for brush control on the trailways?
Well, it's a provincial park. So the brush control does come under the provincial government, but of course, it's a $500,000 proposition. So right now, as we speak, we're doing we have a project that we're doing work on the West Coast. There's 2 or 3 projects on the go. So everybody chips in. The Snowmobile Federation has done some work, and of course, Newfoundland Trailways is doing work. So we're all having a crack at it, but it is a slow process, and we're hoping to get it done, but. To go through now and just to clear it from the whole province, we're looking at over $500,000. So, and of course, it's more than just cutting the brush. You got to cut it, you got to remove it, you got to cut it properly. You got to, you got to dig it out of the ground. You can't leave the spears. You can't fill the ditches. So, it's certainly a complicating factor for sure.
And I almost hate to ask this one, but there's very recently been a death associated with an ATV issue. I don't know exactly what happened. Do you have any information?
No, I don't, Paddy, but you always got to wear your helmet, of course, wear your seatbelt, ride in an approved area. Some of the crashes that we're seeing is a situation where high rate of speed on pavement, 2 tires on pavement, 2 tires on gravel. That's the recipe for disaster, especially once you get over, 25, 30 kilometers an hour. These tires are pretty sticky. And when they're riding over dissimilar surfaces, it's, like I said, a recipe for disaster.
Well, the tires simply aren't designed for pavement, period.
Exactly. That's why the speed limit is 20 kilometres an hour or less, up to a kilometre, and that's a gift.
I appreciate the time, Rick. Thank you.
Oh, we appreciate the time also, Paddy. Thank you very much.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Rick Noseworthy, President of Newfoundland Trailways. Very quickly, so apparently Tom tells us that the 2023 Halifax fire was caused by an ATV. I didn't know that. So there you go. There's an example. And, of course, when we talk about brush cutting, thankfully the province, and hopefully we do a lot of grubbing the alders back from the province's highways and byways, because obviously to have a fighting chance to avoid banging into a moose, you need to be able to see it coming. So with the $5 million recently announced, brush cutting budget goes from $2 million to $4 million, and then of course $1 million associated with a 6-kilometre stretch of moose fencing on the Salmonair line. Let's take a break. Jennifer, you're next. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 3. Good morning, Jennifer. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. Thank you so much for having me on here today.
No problem.
I'd like to talk about the St. John's City's decision to remove the wooden slipway down in Kitty Bitty. So a few days ago, residents received a piece of paper in the mail that they're going to be having an engagement meeting, and on it says the city is committed to providing access to the beach. So what's going on is they're claiming that the slipway is not safe. Now, there are a few boards that do need to be replaced, but there's currently 5 boats housed on that, and I feel that it's extremely crucial to our urban fisheries and our community members to have this slipway. The slipway allows us to store our boats. It allows easier access to the water. If there's anyone who has a leak or needs to work on their motor, they're able to pull it up to the slipway. It's really going to strongly affect feeding Newfoundland families in our urban communities. It's the only slipway that we have in the St. John's area to access the fishing grounds. We do have the harbour in St. John's, but you would need a crane. There's nothing there for the recreational fishery. So I just kind of wanted to let people know that the city is looking to dismantle that to make way for beach access. And there's not really, I don't know if you've been down there, Patty, there's not much of a beach down there. When the tide comes up, it goes straight to the grass. So it's kind of foolish, honestly. It's a huge public safety risk. There are people, tragically, who have passed away in that harbour. It's not a place for swimming. It's not a place for putting your towel down and kind of enjoying the sun. It's a functional place. There are fish pieces. Once we are finished cutting our fish, we had to put that back to the earth. So we put that back in the water. So during the fisheries, there's so many different fish pieces in the water. It's not really something that you want to sit in a chair and gawk at. I have serious concerns of how detrimental this is going to be to our urban community. And so we're looking to get a petition going to try and keep that preserved from future development and stop them from taking that down from beach access.
Now, I don't know if it's the right thing or the wrong thing for it to be removed, but it certainly needed significant repairs, didn't it, Jennifer?
Yes, it absolutely does need repairs. The structure itself is very sound, so the underneath of it is very sound. There are, I think, 5 or 6 maximum broken boards down there. So it's not that it would be a high cost of repair, but it was built in 1985 by the hands of the residents, so it certainly could use a little bit of upkeep. And it could definitely use some repair, but I really feel like it would be detrimental to us to completely remove it to make way for this foolish beach access.
And when is it scheduled to be removed?
So there's an engagement meeting on the 25th from 6 to 8 p.m. with Engage St. John's, and they're looking for the community's input on what we should put on the beach. So I'm going to be down at the Slipway Saturday from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m., just having a little information rally. I'm going to have the petition there, gathering letters from people who use the Slipway, and just letting people know how crucial this truly is, and how financially it's going to really set a lot of people back having to go to Dominion to get their cod, opposed to, going down and getting their cod themselves.
And so the next option is in the small craft harbour in St. John's for launching a boat, I mean.
Pardon me, sorry?
So the only other option close by is in the small craft harbour in St. John's Harbour, but you say that there's nothing there to help launch a boat.
Not to my knowledge for, someone recreationally who just has, a small little aluminum boat. I do not think, and I could be wrong, I stand to be corrected. I'm certainly not right about everything, but from my knowledge, there is nowhere there for, say, if I just wanted to take my aluminum boat and put it down in the water and navigate out, that option is not there. From my knowledge, this is the only slipway that's there.
Yeah, because I can't think of one. I'm trying to bounce my mind around and see if I can think of one somewhere else close by. Maybe the next one might be like in St. Philip's or on Portugal Gulf.
It might be. Yeah, Patty, like for the, Paradise, Mount Pearl, for our urban community, this is really all we have. And, we're down there. It's a huge sense of community down there. And I think they're trying to get rid of it for tourism reasons. But, the harbor is already taken up a lot. There's not much left for the residents. And people come down there, to watch the fishermen go out. They come down to see them gutting the fish. And, you see the tourists taking pictures of everyone down on the slipway. So I do feel like it'll also have a negative impact on our tourism down there. People come down to see the fishing village. We take the slipway out. There's no point in even having the stages and stuff there because it's not, we're not going to be able to use that the way that it's supposed to be used.
Fair enough. I'll follow up with I guess it's a city responsibility, I would imagine, is it? Or is it a...
So it's a bit of a tricky situation, Patty. So the city is looking to tear... I've been doing a lot of research the past week. The city is looking to tear it down. But it's actually owned by Public Works Canada. So the slipway itself is federal.
Yeah, I was going to say, because as soon as I said city, I'm thinking it probably isn't the city. Anyway.
No, well, it's the city. Yeah, so I'm trying to work out, who do we petition and how do we go about this? Because it is the city looking to tear it down. It is on federal land, and then we have the surrounding land of it, of the access, like the parking lot. That's Crown land owned by someone else who already has a majority of the harbor taken up for tourism. So it's a very, very tricky situation, Patty, and I really feel like, we really need to do what we can to preserve our cultures and our history and our ability to feed ourselves. That's part of our culture is we live off the land, we live in the water. I feel it's so important to preserve that, especially here in urban Newfoundland, because we don't have those opportunities like they have in rural.
Fair enough. And so regardless of who has the ultimate responsibility, I will also poke around to see exactly who's part of this decision-making process and try to have it on the program.
I would greatly appreciate it, Patty. And do you ever want me to call back? Feel free. I'll fill you in. Like I said, Tuesday, anyone who wants to head down to the Artesian Studios on the 26th from 6 to 8 for the engagement meeting, be heard. And this Saturday from 1 to 5 tomorrow, if anyone wants to come down and have a chat with me and meet the people who actually built it and hear from the residents, that would be greatly appreciated to pop down. So thank you so much for having me on the line, Patty, and thank you for helping people's voices be heard.
I appreciate your time, Jennifer. Keep me in the loop when you know more.
I will, absolutely. I'll keep you updated. Thank you so much.
Thank you. You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
All right, let's get another one for the news. Let's go to line number 4. Rosalind, you're on the air.
Yes, good morning, Patty. How are you today?
I'm grand. How about you?
Oh, very well, thank you. Patty, I'm just ringing in this morning as it is Indigenous Day, National Indigenous Day, and I wanted to express my appreciation and acknowledgement of this special day. I'm not quite sure anybody has spoken to the issue. I haven't heard your program this morning, so I apologize if I'm being redundant here.
No, not at all. So in the province, and we did mention it off the top, I did one of the breakdowns that was part of the Vital Signs report from the Harris Centre, and if the whole province was a community of 100, nine of these people would be Indigenous. So we have 9% of the province is Indigenous.
Precisely. I'm not quite sure what that fits into, the appreciation aspect of it, but I guess it is National Appreciation Day, and I wanted to, acknowledge it and express my appreciation to the Indigenous people of this province. After all, they were great leaders in settling this place that we call home, and played a significant role in it, along with many others. I'm not just picking out one group. So I wanted to just express that appreciation, for which I'm grateful for. And I think it's interesting to note that, you know, we acknowledge Indigenous people in a manner that we don't necessarily, I guess maybe even on a personal level, acknowledge others, such as the elderly. Within the Aboriginal communities or Indigenous communities, the elderly are revered. They are the elderly that people look to for their cultural heritage, and people respect these people and look for them to guidance and leadership often. And yes, within our own province, and I guess nationally and elsewhere, we have a very large elderly population in this province, and I know that we have, you know, Seniors Month, and we have Seniors Day, and so on and so forth. But I guess my feeling is that we do not express the same respect and appreciation to the elders, such as my parents, for all they have done in you know, settling, our forefathers settling, and you know, my parents who are in their 80s, carrying on traditions and so on. We don't look to these people for respect. We don't show them the same respect. Often we don't show them appropriate dignity. We'd like to poke them away in a corner somewhere if we could. So I think that the Indigenous people of this province and the country have done an incredible job of respecting their elders. And it would be lovely to see some kind of similar respect shown for our non-Indigenous elders of this province.
Absolutely. And, you know, you talk about elders and the role and preservation of culture and tradition. And when we talk about Indigenous people, add to it language, of course, because there's lots of worries around the country about exactly that and some things being done here. Like I heard a story this morning about a new choir being established at I'm not very good at pronouncing some of these words. Miapotek. I think that's close. And a new choir where they're actually saying they're actually learning some of their own traditional language that is being lost rapidly, but they're learning it through song, which I thought was an interesting facet of that story. Rosalind, before we get to the news, would you like to add anything else this morning?
No, I would. I guess, yes, I would.
Okay.
I guess I would just like to put out there that, you know, if people are listening, and they have elderly parents, such as mine, who feel that there should be more recognition of our elders within our community. I'd like to hear more from them because it's really a silent subject.
100%. And we did have this seniors advocate on, Susan Walsh, talking about things like ageism, which is part of this conversation, I believe. And they actually had a social media campaign to have people, either individual seniors or someone in the seniors family, to put forward, you know, here's what my nan or pop or mom or dad are doing in their senior years, giving back to the community, whether it be as a volunteer or municipal leader or whatever the case may be. So, yes, I agree. That type of conversation is obviously important.
But I think the advocate, the seniors advocate, needs to broaden who they reach out to, and perhaps visit some of the facilities where the elderly are residing. My parents are residing at Heritage Square now, for example. Come in and sit down and talk to these people and see what they're going through. There are many, not here, I can't speak for here, it's not my business, but there are many who come to facilities like this may not have family, and they're in a room alone. So we should be doing. It's time to. It's not time to forget about food, a choice of food and fuel. We've been talking about that for 30 years. Our population is aging. The demographics will show that very clearly. And from many aspects, from healthcare to just basically honoring these people, the same as we would fishermen and our forefathers who were fishermen, in prosecuting the fishery, pioneering the fishery, developing the fishery. But you would be hard-pressed today to find somebody who could fillet a fish because we have let that heritage go. So we can take many pages from the indigenous people and how they have managed to come together and pass their culture, through generations.
I appreciate the time, Rosalind. I do have to get to the news. Thank you.
Yep, no problem. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. All right, let's take a break. When we go back, we mentioned the fact that the province is going to have its first funeral home co-op. We'll find out more about that when we talk to Corey Jordan, who's the GM of Knowles and Green's Funeral Homes. Don't go away.
The Tim Powers Show. Join the conversation weekday afternoons at 4 p.m. on your VOCM.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 3. Say good morning to the GM of Knowles Funeral Homes. That's Corey Jordan. Good morning, Corey. You're on the air.
Hi, how are you this morning?
I'm very well, thank you for asking. How about you?
Good, thank you. Thank you for having me this morning.
Happy to do it. So Knowles Funeral Homes has been a family-owned business since about 1930. Got a variety of locations, I think Harbour Grace, Western Bay, and Carbonair, but now part of a co-op, which I think has been purchased by a federation that's located in Quebec. What's happened?
That's absolutely correct. So what happened is Mr. Knowles was looking to transition, and during that transition, he wanted to make sure that the funeral homes were sold to people that would make sure that the funeral homes stayed part of the community. So a little bit different co-op. I don't know how much you know about it or not. We're not like an equity firm. So at the end of the day, our main focus is making sure that the funeral home stays exactly the same way it was when Mr. Knowles owned it, and ensuring that everything stays status quo for the folks of the community.
So, and you're right, I don't know how this works, because in a co-op in the fishery or a co-op in housing, I have a base understanding of how that would work. So is anything going to change? And why is a cooperative the best idea for whether it be to keep the community, keep the funeral home in the community and to tailor funeral needs? So exactly what changes here?
So really nothing will change that way. What the major difference is when a co-op would purchase, say, the funeral home. So the federation, the cooperative federation that has assisted in this, they're out of Quebec, and there's numerous funeral homes they've helped with. So what happens is that at the end there's membership. So the other day we had a membership drive here at the funeral home. So people can become a member for $20 for a lifetime membership. And what that does is that guarantees that there's great pricing for them. So with a co-op, that allows that we can buy products at a lower cost. As well, at the end of the year, so a little different than an equity firm, we don't have to worry so much about profits. So obviously we have to ensure that there's enough money there in case of roof leaks, but instead of raising prices, we can actually lower prices for the community at the end of the day. And that's a great added value, we feel, for everyone here.
So does that mean, I guess this particular co-op owns about 20 different funeral co-ops just in the province of Quebec. They've branched out a little further, New Brunswick and into Ontario, and now, of course, made its way to this province. So is the potential for savings based on bulk purchasing, like for caskets and or urns or whatever?
Exactly. So let's say now casket buying, before it would only be based on the individual funeral home, if you were privately owned funeral home, where now we're able to expand that. We have that pricing discount because it's all of us as a network buying those products from, say, a casket company or an urn company.
In relation to the other funeral homes that are part of these cooperatives, is there some sort of understanding of what the percentage of cost savings would be, possibly?
I don't have the exact percentage, but it is significant. So it is a significant savings. As well, at the end of the day, when it's a cooperative, the members have a say in what takes place in the cooperative. So it's a great kind of way to keep everyone on track. So let's say the Knowles Funeral Home served a local family here. That family, if they were members, they would be able to have a voice in saying, we would like to see this happen, or we'd like to see that happen. So these are all great features of the co-op. A little different, so if Mr. Knowles would have sold to a large equity firm, the approach is usually different.
Right, because they take equity out. So correct. What would be in it for, and I'll use the acronym of FCFQ, for that big cooperative in Quebec, what's in it for them?
What's in it for them is that we get to help all funeral homes. The people who work at the FCFQ have a lot of funeral acronym, so they're able to help negotiate pricing. They're able to help us in the HR end of things. They're able to ensure that we stay on track because they have the knowledge. So they've been doing this for approximately 60 years already.
Oh.
Yeah, it's not a new venture.
Because I guess because it wasn't in this province, I had never heard of a cooperative regarding funeral homes.
Yeah, it's quite large, obviously, in the province of Quebec. In Ontario, there's a few as well, and then some of the maritime provinces. So we're really excited that this will be our first cooperative funeral home in the province of Newfoundland. And we really think it's going to be great for the folks here that they'll be able to start seeing the effects of it coming down the line.
And I don't know if you have the answer to this question, but given the fact that now the FCFQ has come to the province, do you know how they are working with other funeral home operators, how aggressive they're being to try to bring folks into their co-op?
Well, at the end of the day, for the co-op, and I can answer it to the best of my ability, for the co-op, the person who would be, say, selling their funeral home to the co-op would want to make sure that they want their funeral home to stay a community entity. So for Mr. Knowles and Mr. Green, their main objective at the end of the day was to take a subjective view that this was going to become a community entity where they didn't have to worry about the community having price increases through the roof, let's say. Where they knew that it was going to very much become the community. And the other part of it is a succession plan. So for a lot of funeral home owners, they want to make sure that a succession plan is in line. So if they had children or so forth, where, Mr. Knowles and Mr. Green are still part of our communities here. So it's really great. Actually, just the other day I saw Mr. Green.
I appreciate you making time. Anything else you'd like to tell us about this while we have you, Corey?
Yeah, I would encourage all the community members around to stop by and become a member, and knowing that the more membership, the more people that become that member, so that $20 fee for a lifetime membership, they'll allow them the voice to ask why things are as they are. So once we're up and going, everything will become public knowledge that way, and we're really excited about it.
Do you have to be a member to avail of the cost savings?
That's correct.
Okay. Nice to have you on the show, Corey. Thank you for making time.
Thank you so much. Take care now.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Corey Jordan, the General Manager of Knowles and Green's Funeral Home. Final break of the morning and the week. When we come back, Woody French. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number one. Say good morning to the President of the Peacekeepers Veterans Association of Newfoundland and Labrador. That's Woody French. Good morning, Woody. You're on the air.
Good morning, Pat. Great talking to you again.
Happy to have you on the show.
Just got a couple of things that I want to talk about, and this is certainly veteran-related. We purchased a ex-Army Jeep and a trailer that we're using for our organization, and the object of the thing is to try to get veterans involved with us, and particularly veterans that are having problems with PTSD, try to help them to get back into their community. And also, with this Jeep and trailer, we're able to participate in food banks and help out the community. And as a group of veterans, we're able to give back to our community. And we had that opportunity a couple of weeks ago. We participated in the car show over in Bay Roberts. And at that show, we advertised that we would accept food for the food bank in that area. And in addition to the food that was donated, we passed along a check for $1,000 between ourselves and the car show sponsors, which was a great help to the food bank in that area. So if you see this Jeep around town, it'll have some United Nations markings on it. It's in a camouflage mode, and our guys will have a jacket on that identifies us as peacekeepers. And so I just want to let the public know about that. And any groups that we can help out, by all means, they can certainly feel free to give me a call, and we'll certainly arrange to help out in that area. But it's a new venture for us. And as I stated earlier, we have a big problem with some of our veterans as a result of their service. They've really got a lot of problems, and anything that we can do to help them, that'll be fantastic. So I just wanted to put that word out there as the first thing.
When you talk about have a lot of problems, are we talking about, reintegrating with their PTSD or housing issues, or what do you mean?
Well, most of it is mostly we're talking about the people that are suffering from PTSD. And you know that among veterans we have a really, really high rate of suicides per capita, and to try to reach some of those veterans is our goal.
Of course, and you mean there's just a serious gap in services and support for veterans, period. I mean, the stories we hear about they fall prey to addictions and homelessness, it really should never be the case.
It is, Patty. It's sad, that when we served, everything was on the line. And once we completed our service and came back to civilian life, it's in some cases that, your support services are not there for you, although, through Veterans Affairs now, they've beefed up their programs quite a bit, and but they're still human beings. They don't take advantage of things for different reasons, and so on and so forth. And if this little Jeep can light a spark somewhere, to get them involved, and then we can help them get any services that they might need, and so on and so forth. And sometimes it's easier for a veteran to talk to a veteran, and we're hoping that we can be a bit of a catalyst in that particular area and help them, and in so doing, then help the community as well.
I appreciate the time this morning, and keep up the good work, Woody.
Yeah, no problem, Patty. And I just wanted to let you know I had the honor of being part of the repatriation team to go over to bring our comrade, our brother, home, and quite an emotional trip, to say the least, and certainly encourage everybody to participate as much as they possibly can at the viewing at the Confederation Building, and certainly on July the 1st at the War Memorial. It's going to be a tough day for us veterans, and it's certainly an honor for Newfoundland and Labrador. It's a thing that hasn't happened in the past here and will never happen in the future, and it's an opportunity to be part of history and pay respects to this young individual that gave up his life so that we could enjoy things today, like having a chat with you on the open line, and being able to enjoy this great province that we have.
Appreciate that, Woody. Enjoy the day as best possible.
Thank you, buddy. Really appreciate the opportunity, and look forward to talking to you in the future.
Me too. Thanks, Woody. Have a nice weekend.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
You too.
Likely last word goes to line number 3. Eleanor, you're on the air.
Thank you, Patty. I'm a little nervous. This is my first time. So, but I have a question, and then I'll tell you my story as quickly as I can. I know I don't have much time.
Okay.
For the ambulance in Newfoundland, you call 911, correct?
That's right.
Okay, so when you call 911, where do that call go to? Is it out of province that they answer the phone, or?
No, that's not my understanding, unless something has changed recently. Why? What happened?
My brother had to go on an ambulance yesterday. My sister-in-law called the ambulance service, And first of all, they had to wait 2 or 3 hours before they got the ambulance to come. The gentleman that was on the other line, he asked where they were living. She told him it was in Great Cove. And he looked it up. He said, well, there's 3 places of Great Cove in Newfoundland. I lived in Great Cove all my life till I moved out, and we only knew of one Great Cove, and that's the Great Cove where I grew up. And then he said, when the ambulance comes, he said, have someone out in the road, he said, flagging us down so we know where we have to go into to pick up my brother. And again, she tried to explain to him where we were living, and he just didn't understand. So he kept asking her questions and that. And you know where the ambulance came from for Great Cove?
No.
Bay Roberts. And 3 ambulances up by the hospital in Old Turrican. And they sent an ambulance down from Bay Roberts. Now, something wrong with that.
Yeah, because I know the 911 division is actually on Old Pennywell Road here in the city, but whether or not there's third-party operating dispatch, I really don't know the answer to that, Eleanor, but I can absolutely find out, no problem.
I appreciate that, because this gentleman that answered the phone apparently didn't know anything about Newfoundland.
Well, there could be people that are born and raised in St. John's know very little about it. So I will find out an answer to that question, and I'll talk about it on Monday. So you tune into the program, and I'll have it figured out by then.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate the time. Hope all is well.
Thank you now.
You're welcome, Eleanor.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye. Yeah, does anyone know the answer to that question? I didn't think that was the case, but anyway, we'll figure it out. All right, good show today. Big thanks to everyone who supports the program, and we will indeed pick up this conversation again on Monday morning, right here on VOCM and Big Land FM's Open Line. On behalf of the producer, David Williams, I'm your host, Paddy Daly. Have yourself a safe, fun, happy weekend. Talk Monday. Bye-bye.
Hello, it is Ryan, and we could all use an extra bright spot in our day, couldn't we? Just to make up for things like sitting in traffic, doing the dishes, counting your steps, you know, all the mundane stuff. That is why I'm such a big fan of Chumba Casino. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere with daily bonuses. That should brighten your day a little. Actually, a lot. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com. That's ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.